The wind rolled across the hills of Ashwick like a whisper from the past. Emily Hargrave stood at the edge of the overgrown path leading to her childhood home, a crumbling cottage shaded by ancient willow trees. Her boots sank into the damp earth as she took the first step up the creaking porch. The key, long forgotten in the bottom of her handbag, turned reluctantly in the lock. The scent inside was the same, aged timber, dried lavender, and something faintly bitter, like memories that had soured with time. Dust coated the surfaces. Cobwebs cradled the corners. Emily dropped her suitcase by the front door and stood in silence, letting the quiet wrap around her like an old shawl. She hadn't returned since her mother's funeral 2 weeks ago. She couldn't. There had been too much to process, too many years of silence between them. Emily had left Ashwick for Manchester with a degree, a job, and a clear mission to never come back. But now, with her mother gone, the house was hers, along with everything left inside it. By the fireplace stood her mother's rocking chair, motionless now. The worn tartan blanket still draped over the back made her chest tighten. On the mantel, a faded photograph of the two of them smiled out from behind cracked glass. Emily turned away, unwilling to let herself feel too much too quickly. She had come to pack. To sell. To leave again. But fate had other plans. It was while clearing out the small study that she noticed the uneven floorboard. It sat slightly higher than the others beneath the old writing desk. Emily knelt, pried it up, and there it was, a tin box, wrapped in yellowed string, tucked neatly beneath the floor like a secret no one was ever meant to find. She sat on the floor, heart thudding, as she opened it. Inside were old photographs, a few dried flowers pressed in a notebook, and a single envelope. Her name wasn't on it. Instead, it was addressed to someone she had never heard of. To William, for the day you return. The handwriting was unmistakably her mother's. Emily's fingers trembled as she unfolded the page inside. My dearest William. I never stopped waiting. I never stopped hoping. The girl is yours, though I told her otherwise. I had to protect her. I had to protect myself. Forgive me. Lillian. Emily read it again. And again. Her breath hitched. The girl is yours. Who was William? And what did her mother mean by I told her otherwise? Was everything Emily had ever believed about her life a lie? She stared at the letter, the shadows from the willow trees dancing across the faded paper. Something inside her shifted. Like a door in her chest unlocking for the very first time. She had come back to Ashwick to say goodbye. But now, she wasn't sure she could leave at all. The days that followed were thick with rain and restless thoughts. Emily tried to focus on packing, but her mind kept drifting back to the letter and the mysterious William. Who was he? Why had her mother kept him a secret for so long? And how could she find out the truth? One evening, as twilight settled over Ashwick, Emily wandered down the narrow lane behind the house. The willow trees swayed gently, their long branches brushing the ground like whispered voices. The village felt smaller than she remembered, quieter, too. Most of the shops had closed or been replaced. Faces were unfamiliar, eyes wary. Emily's footsteps brought her to the small village pub, the Willow's Rest, where she hesitated before pushing open the door. Inside, the warm glow of a fire met her, along with the low murmur of voices. She spotted the landlord, a stout man with a kind face, Mr. Carter, who had once been her mother's closest friend. Emily, is that you? His eyes widened. I heard about your mum. I'm sorry for your loss. Thank you, Mr. Carter. Emily forced a smile. I'm trying to find out more about my family. He nodded slowly, lowering his voice. There are stories, secrets that some say should stay buried. Your mum was a strong woman, but she carried a heavy burden. Do you know anything about William? Emily asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Mr. Carter hesitated, then said, there was a man. Came to Ashwick years ago, but he left suddenly. Not many remember him now. Your mum never spoke of him, but folks say their story wasn't simple. Emily left the pub feeling more puzzled than before. The village was a tangle of half-truths and silent glances. But one thing was certain, the past was not done with her. Back at the cottage, she sat by the window, watching the willows bend in the wind. She reached for her phone and began typing a message to an old friend in Manchester, someone who might help her dig deeper into the mystery. Sometimes the roots you bury are the ones that keep you grounded. The next morning, Emily received a reply from her old friend, Sarah. She worked as a local historian in Manchester, fascinated by family histories and forgotten tales. Sarah's message was brief but promising. I might know something about William. Let's meet tomorrow. That night, Emily sat by the flickering candlelight in the cottage kitchen, feeling the weight of years pressing down on her shoulders. Her mother's past felt like a puzzle she was only beginning to understand. Every clue pulled her deeper into a world she had never imagined. She wandered into the garden, where the willows whispered their secrets in the cool night air. The flowers her mother had pressed, the tiny bluebells, still clung to their pages in the notebook she had found. Emily traced the delicate petals, wondering what stories they held. She thought about the man in the letter. What had happened to him? Why had he left? And most of all, why had her mother protected Emily from the truth? The village might have its silent suspicions, but Emily was determined to find answers. Tomorrow, she would journey to Manchester. Tomorrow, the past would begin to unravel. Emily woke before dawn, her mind restless with questions and a cautious hope. The air in Ashwick was crisp, the mist curling around the willows like ghostly fingers. She packed her small bag with essentials and the old notebook containing her mother's pressed flowers and faded letters. The letter from William was folded carefully inside, its delicate script still vivid in her mind. Before leaving the cottage, Emily stood in the garden for a moment, breathing in the scent of damp earth and honeysuckle. She looked towards the fields beyond, where golden wheat rippled in the early light. The farm had been her mother's world, a place of quiet strength and hard work. Now, it was a symbol of all the things Emily had left behind, and everything she hoped to reclaim. The journey to Manchester was longer than she remembered. The countryside slipped away, replaced by rolling hills, then by the sprawling cityscape of brick and glass. She felt the pulse of the city in her veins, louder, faster, more complicated than the peaceful village she had called home. At the station, Sarah was waiting, her dark hair tied back and eyes bright with curiosity. They embraced quickly, then settled into a quiet cafe nearby, away from the hum of commuters. I've done some digging, Sarah began, pulling out a folder of old documents and photographs. William was William Hale, a writer from London who came to Ashwick in the early 90s. He was different from the others. Quiet, thoughtful, but with a restless spirit. Emily listened intently as Sarah unfolded the story. William had fallen in love with Emily's mother, Anne, during a brief but intense summer. They planned to leave Ashwick together, escape the small village for a new life in the city. But William disappeared suddenly, leaving no explanation. The letters your mother kept, Sarah said, were his only connection to the past. But after he left, she refused to speak about him. Emily's heart tightened. Why had William gone? And why had her mother sealed the past away so tightly? They spent hours poring over records, piecing together fragments of a story that seemed both beautiful and heartbreaking. The truth was tangled in whispers of betrayal, fear, and sacrifice, a truth Emily was now determined to face. As dusk fell, Emily walked back to her small rented room, the city lights twinkling like distant stars. She felt both lost and strangely alive, on the edge of a discovery that would change everything. Emily spent the following days buried in archives and records at the Manchester Library. Each document she uncovered seemed to pull her deeper into a complicated tapestry of love, loss, and secrets that had haunted her family for decades. One afternoon, as rain pattered softly against the library windows, Sarah and Emily uncovered a faded photograph tucked inside an old book. It showed a young man standing beside a man, unmistakably William Hale. His arm was protectively around her, and their faces held the glow of early romance. Emily's fingers trembled as she traced the image. "This was before everything fell apart," she whispered. Sarah nodded. "There's more. William's disappearance wasn't just a sudden departure. There are letters here, unsent, hidden away in an attic in London. Letters that suggest danger, threats even. Someone wanted him gone." Emily's heart raced. Danger. Threats. It all sounded like the plot of a novel, but this was her real history, and it was unraveling piece by piece. That evening, Emily sat alone in her rented room, the weight of new knowledge pressing on her. Memories of her mother's silence, her sudden bitterness, and the farm left to decay took on new meaning. Her mother had not just lost a lover, she had fought to protect her family from shadows long buried. Determined to learn more, Emily reached out to an old contact Sarah knew, a retired detective who had worked in London during the early 90s. He agreed to meet her, promising answers that might finally bring peace. As night fell over the city, Emily looked out her window, the rain now a steady drumbeat on the glass. The past was no longer distant. It was alive, demanding she face it. Emily arrived at a quiet cafe in a tucked-away corner of London, the air thick with the scent of brewed coffee and old books. Across from her sat Detective James Harding, a man with kind eyes and a weathered face that spoke of years spent chasing shadows. He unfolded a thin file, revealing letters and photographs that had long been buried in police archives. William Hale's case was closed as a disappearance, he began, but the truth was far more complicated. Emily listened as Harding recounted how William had stumbled upon something dangerous, a local crime syndicate operating beneath the city's surface. His writings hinted at exposing their secrets, and for that, he became a target. There were threats, intimidation, even attempts on his life. Anne knew, and she was terrified. She chose to protect her family by cutting ties and burying the past, Harding said. Emily's mind swirled. Her mother's silence was a shield against a hidden danger Emily had never imagined. Yet in protecting her, she had left Emily to face confusion and unanswered questions. Harding slid a faded letter across the table. It was William's final message, never sent to Anne, explaining his fear and hope to return once the danger had passed. Tears welled in Emily's eyes. The man her mother loved had fought shadows so dark that love alone could not conquer them. And now Emily held the fragments of a story that demanded to be told. As she left the cafe, the London sky was heavy with rain, but Emily felt a lightness inside. The past was no longer a prison. It was a path forward, leading her home. Back in Ashwick, the once quiet village now felt alive with anticipation as Emily returned to the farm. The land was tired, the fences worn, and the fields tangled with weeds, but to Emily, it was a canvas waiting for renewal. Her neighbors watched with cautious curiosity. Some whispered about the city girl who had left without a word, others doubted her resolve to save a farm long abandoned. But Emily was determined. This was more than soil and crops, it was her inheritance, her mother's legacy, and her chance for redemption. She began by repairing fences, clearing fields, and tending to the livestock. Each task reconnected her to the rhythms of the earth, and with every sunrise, Emily felt the weight of years lift. One afternoon, old Mr. Fletcher, the village historian, visited with a box of photographs and letters he had found in the church attic. "These belong to your family," he said kindly. "Stories that might help you understand where you come from." As Emily sifted through the treasures, she found herself smiling for the first time in years. The past was painful, yes, but it was also full of love, resilience, and strength. That evening, standing beneath the ancient willows that gave the farm its name, Emily felt a gentle breeze brush her cheek. It was as if the past was whispering encouragement, urging her onward. The road ahead was uncertain, but for the first time, Emily was ready to face it, not as a stranger, but as a daughter of Ashwick. The seasons changed, and the farm slowly blossomed under Emily's care. The once broken fences stood firm, the fields turned green with new life, and the animals thrived. But the true harvest was not just in crops, but in the healing of old wounds. Emily had invited the villagers to a harvest festival, a celebration not just of the land's revival, but of community and forgiveness. People came from near and far, curious to see the farm reborn and the woman who had returned to reclaim her family's legacy. As lanterns flickered in the twilight, Emily stood beside the ancient willows, feeling a deep sense of peace. She had uncovered the truth, faced the shadows of the past, and found strength in the roots she once fled. A familiar figure approached, Sarah, her steadfast friend who had helped her unravel the past. Together, they watched as neighbors shared stories, laughter, and hope. Emily knew that the road ahead would still have challenges, but she no longer feared them. The farm was more than soil and stone, it was a symbol of love, courage, and the power of coming home. And in that moment, under the wide English sky, Emily felt truly free.